Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2019 Gallup Learning Series. We are excited to have you here today. My name is Jim Collison. On behalf of the Learning Series team, we want to thank you for joining us, taking the time out of your schedule, whether you've woken up early or it's middle of the afternoon or it's evening time for you, whatever that might be. We want to thank you for making the effort to be out here today. We're excited to have you join us for this week of learning, offered exclusively. Remember, that's important. Offered exclusively for Gallup certified strengths coaches. And there is a participant guide that is available for you. The link for that is in the YouTube description right below this video into here. There's a link you can see. If you haven't downloaded that and printed it, it's also a writable PDF. You can do that as well. Don't forget, today's session is being recorded, so there's a lot of things that go on inside the chat, and oftentimes you might miss some things. This session in particular, you might want to listen to undistracted, so you can listen to it again. They're all recorded. Same exact link as you are using right now to watch us. A reminder that ICF credits are available. This session has been approved by ICF for core competency training hours. For those attending live, we'll provide more information about that at the end of our session. We'll have a slide for you available to tell you how to do that. If you want to get involved in our chat room, that is available as well. If you look to the right of your screen, there is a chat room there. You just have to be logged into a Google account. There's two options, upper left-hand corner. One is top chat. The other is live chat. The live chat feature is the best for you. So switch that over now while you have that available. And we will actually use the chat today for what we're doing with this coaching. So jump in there and join us. Our guest today, Ryan Fagan, he's a talent management practice consultant here at Gallup. His top 5 are learner, futuristic, analytical, intellection, and ideation. Ryan is an expert at delivering training and coaching that engages audiences and improves organizational and individual productivity, profitability, and performance. He has spent more than 1,000 hours in one-on-one coaching conversations with managers, leaders, and individuals. His coaching helps clients discover their talents and set tangible goals to better manage, influence, lead, and achieve business outcomes. And welcome, Ryan. Jacqueline Robinson is also joining us today. She's a learning and development consultant here at Gallup. Her top 5 are achiever, strategic, maximizer, positivity, and relator. She's a workplace consultant and works with organizations and leaders to improve their business performance by serving as an expert coach. She provides advice and insight on candidates, talents profiles, and on strategies to help implement change management. Jacqueline's areas of expertise are in Gallup strengths-based development and workplace practices, including employee selection, strengths coaching, leadership and development training. Jessica Dawson is back with us again. She's a learning and development consultant. Her top 5 are futuristic, relator, activator, developer, and individualization. Jessica, in her learning and development role, does consulting based on out of Gallup's Chicago office, very chilly Chicago office today. She translates Gallup's research, management, and science and best practices into practical, compelling, and powerful programs that produce organizational change for Gallup's clients. She also delivers in-depth coaching on the results of strengths and engagements assessments for individuals and teams. Great to have all 3 of you. Jessica, I'll take it and send it over to you.
Thanks so much, Jim. Well, welcome everyone. So excited to be with you here again today. And in terms of the focus, what we're going to be talking about, well, I am going to be coaching Ryan for you live. And as I do so, Jacqueline will be the observer, and she'll be taking some notes for a discussion that we'll have after that live coaching. And as we are doing the coaching, we really want to invite you as coaches to think about tactics that I pull into the coaching, and then maybe even think about some tactics that maybe you would do differently. And we can have a nice, rich discussion after we do this coaching session. I also just want to express that I know all of you are coaches on the line. Coaching is raw, it is unscripted, it is unfiltered. It sometimes is messy as we are dealing with the growth of an individual. So that's what we are bringing to you today. I have no idea what Ryan is going to be asking me to coach him on. So this is going to be an adventure. We're going to go ahead and dive in. Again, unscripted. So hi, Ryan. How's it going?
I'm doing well, Jessica.
Doing well?
Doing well, thank you. How about you?
Excellent. I'm doing well as well. So excited to get to coach you here today. And before we dive in, Ryan, I would love to hear, I know we got a little bit of from the introduction in terms of your role at Gallup, but I would love to hear just a little bit about you yourself, your role, maybe about what your day-to-day looks like, if you don't mind, just to get us kicked off here.
Yeah, absolutely. So my role has evolved a bit, and I spend quite a bit of time lately coordinating efforts between members of our talent-based hiring research team and our salespeople and account leads that are consulting with our clients. And so I often have to be the diplomat, the coordinator, and that helps our account leadership teams and our research efforts be aligned, coordinated, on the same page, so that we can provide the best science and the most up-to-date science to our selection clients, and also make sure that we are addressing clients' real problems in a practical and impactful fashion.
That's excellent. And what do you enjoy most about what you do?
There is absolutely no shortage of learning. And I laugh a bit because you all heard that is my my number one talent. But I so much get to learn about kind of the real perceived problems and frustrations of my clients and our client leadership teams, as well as learn and see what our researchers are truly capable of and how they can go about in a very scientific and grounded fashion, investigating problems and coming up with discoveries and insights that might be of value to those kind of practical and real problems that our clients are experiencing.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thanks so much for sharing a little bit about yourself, about your role, and also what fills you up most about your day-to-day. I appreciate that. And as we think about our time together, Ryan, I do want to let you know that I am here for you, and we can talk about anything that you'd like to talk about. I've seen people use this time to go deeper on their StrengthsFinder reports. In other instances, people may have some questions on the philosophy or the science of the instrument, likely not the case with you. And in other cases, people are wanting to talk more so about a specific goal or an obstacle that they're facing. So we can take the conversation anywhere that you'd like to take it. I want to make sure that this session is valuable for you today. What do you think would be most valuable in terms of where we spend the time?
There's sort of two topics that bubble to the top for me. There's a number of client projects that I'm involved in and I'm a team member on. Many of them, and I struggle sometimes to know where to best deploy myself. I am quick to offer help. I am quick to say yes, put me in, coach. I want to help. I want to provide. I want to connect and coordinate our researchers and our client lead teams to service clients. On so many projects, I feel successful and impactful, and I'm high-fiving our team members and colleagues at the end of the day. There's one that is kind of a persistent struggle, and I honestly, Jessica, I try to figure out if I need to change what I am doing to create the right impact for that team, or deciding whether or not I need to, maybe transition that to somebody else and focus on the other teams where I'm having impact. So it's, do I improve myself or do something different to try to make the impact that I would like to make, or do I, somehow discern that this isn't the right project for, myself or or some of my teammates.
Excellent. So what I'm hearing you say is there's a struggle to kind of understand where to deploy your efforts and where to kind of put your time. There's a part of you that's quick to help, and you enjoy kind of being the person that can really step up and help people as needed. And there's a question that's you're pondering in terms of, do I need to change what I am doing or transition to someone else? So it's kind of like that discerning factor. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Excellent. So within the two topics, so you said that there were two different topics. Where would you like to start with all of this that's kind of going on in your head? Where would you like to start?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, I think I'd like to get clarity around where I am most effective. and get clarity around, what sorts of projects or efforts, should I say yes to and be eager to step up and help, and how should I maybe leverage a little bit more caution, or leverage a good criteria to know, is this an endeavor? Is this a project that I should involve myself with?
All right, excellent, excellent. And I do want to remind the coaches listening of what your top 5 are. Can you say your top 5 one more time for us?
Yeah, you bet. Learner, futuristic, analytical, intellection, and ideation.
And what are your 6 through 10?
Ooh, there's some activator, there's some focus, maximizer, relator, strategic, and input.
All right, excellent, excellent. So you talk about clarity around where you are most effective, right? So I want us to kind of step into Ryan's world, and I also want you to kind of tap into your feelings here, right? So in a perfect world, where would you spend your time if we were in Ryan's world? What would that look like?
Jessica, in this is a question that for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you could even, yeah, go ahead.
In I think it's where there's something to be figured out, maybe a problem to be solved, a problem that requires some investigation, and troubleshooting, and solutioning. And it needs to be a problem that is, well, I'd like to say I enjoy problems and solutions that are grounded in data, or grounded in some sort of practical reality. I think that's some of my analytical coming through, perhaps.
Excellent, excellent. So something to be figured out, requires investigation, grounded in data. One of the things you talked about was you wanted to have some criteria in terms of where you would be most effective. Talk to me a little bit about how what you just said could fit into creating some criteria for you.
I think a problem that's grounded in evidence, or data, is something that's important. Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing about you being attracted to projects or problems that are rooted in kind of the figuring something out, rooted in data, is that you work for a scientific-based organization, right? So let's drill down into that. I want us to get more specific with this. If you think about maybe your most recent problem that you really enjoyed solving, walk me through what that looked like for you.
Jessica, that's such a wonderful question, because to be honest, so much of my brain space has been occupied with a client, problem, or in client team situation, that is a source of frustration, that I'm not even my initial instinct was that I struggled to come up with a success, because I've been so preoccupied with the problem that is a frustration. But I can come to, so I think that's interesting. Like, that was my gut emotional reaction to your question, was that I immediately wanted to talk about the problematic and the frustrating one.
Okay.
But there's a successful one, is that we had a client that came to us because they were struggling to grow, and they were particularly focused on their sales force. Their sales force had a lot of good employees that had a lot of well, they wanted us to do some troubleshooting of their sales force and help them identify a hiring strategy going forward that would help drive revenue into their business. And I partnered with some of our researchers. I spent time directly with the client. I got to spend time with some of their sales leaders and some of their existing salespeople, and we essentially discovered that a lot of their sales force, a lot of their people were, and it was a technical selling organization, but they were preoccupied with subject matter expertise, which is important, and lacked, or it didn't quite have as robust talent set around the selling of those technical solutions. Didn't quite have the robust talent set, to be able to cultivate relationships, be assertive, persuasive, or decisive, or be a tough negotiator in a sales process. And we were able to identify that for their existing staff, provide that consultative feedback to their sales leadership, provide some coaching to their existing staff, and then identify a better hiring strategy going forward, by which they could make hiring decisions not simply based in subject matter expertise, but based in some of those traits that we know help people sell, influencing type talents.
Excellent. And what about this specific project did you enjoy the most?
So much of it came into the client relationship, or comes from the client relationship. I felt like I really got to get to know the stakeholders of the work. I felt like I got to know and got to spend time with the individuals that would be affected by this work, including kind of the existing sales staff, as well as the recruiters and talent acquisition professionals that had to have a strategy, a hiring way forward from this. So it's a client that remains near and dear to my heart, because I really got to spend time and learn about them, not just by studying data, but by spending time with people, and they were gracious and allowed me to ask questions, allowed me to be a curious outsider, if you will, in their organization, and they indulged that curiosity, and by the time our time together came to a close, I really felt like I had got to know them at a level above many other clients.
All right, excellent. So one of the interesting things about this project was when I asked you about what it is that you enjoy most, you went to the connection with the client, right? So in terms of creating your criteria, what would you now add to your criteria in terms of getting where to spend your time based on this?
I suppose that criteria should include some direct client connections, the opportunity for a relationship.
What talent does that feed of yours in your top 10?
Certainly feeds that relator talent.
For sure, right? Any other talent? Does that feed in any other talent?
I think there's always a relentless curiosity there that gets fed a bit, certainly.
Absolutely. Excellent. So it's so interesting. When you started off, you said there was this pull towards the evidence, the data, the science, but there's a part of you that likes that, but it also sounds like there's very much a part of you that craves that relationship, right? So you now have these 2 points in terms of your criteria, right? So talk to me a little bit about further clarity that you may have now in terms of how to discern the projects and the effectiveness in terms of where you spend your time.
it seems like those projects where I feel the most sort of sense of personal reward, as well as personal fulfillment, as well as the projects where I'm probably making the most or impact for the client are those projects where I get to have some of that, I guess, high level interaction or deep interaction with the client at a personal level. And I suppose for me, that's where, Gallup's, all of our science, all of our research, all of the data that I enjoy, diving into. To me, that's where it kind of comes to life, or becomes meaningful. It's yeah. So I think that criteria for where do I spend my time, we definitely want to add that relationship opportunity, that relationship component to it.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, something that was also interesting that you said was that I found myself wanting to go to those problematic or frustrating projects. Talk to me a little bit about maybe some of the clarity or maybe some of the joy that comes from those projects where you do have those bigger problems, or those projects where maybe it is a bit frustrating, but at the same time, it's engaging.
Good question. And this might be a good time to tell you that I think like strength number 11 is self-assurance. And you couple that with some of my thinking themes, and my wife would tell you that I have a pretty strong DIY streak in me.
Yeah.
And that means that sometimes I open up the cabinets below the sink, or open up a wall and I see a bunch of plumbing and I think, I got this. I can figure this out. I can solve this problem. And ask me, that was a really good question. It prompted some different thinking in me, Jessica. Ask me your question one more time.
Well, let's see if I can get the exact verbiage the same, but it was something to the effect of, you talked, when I first asked the question, the first thing that you said was, I find myself wanting to go to those problematic and frustrating projects. And I'm curious to know from you, what is it about those problematic and those frustrating projects that can sometimes be, it's sometimes frustrating, but at the same time, maybe it is engaging for you. What is it about that? What is it about that feeling that you can maybe extrapolate and bring to you to place it in that criteria that we're creating?
Yeah. So there's an element of discovery, when you're
Mm-hmm.
faced with kind of a new problem. And, typically, it arises in conversation with clients. It's almost like a diagnosis, right? Like you walk into the doctor's office saying like, it hurts here, or this hurts there. And, clients will express some pain points. And the first thing we need to do, is to kind of step back and gather and go on a little bit of a journey of discovery, if you will, to expand what we're talking about. Because sometimes the initial points of pain, there might be some assumptions, about that. I had a recent client that came to us. They're leveraging our talent-based hiring assessments, and they had a retention problem with some of their frontline staff. And they immediately they're kind of saying, well, we need to adjust the assessment because we're struggling to retain the frontline staff that we're hiring via your talent assessment. And so the first thing that my mind does is, okay, there's a retention problem, right? And then I start thinking, what are all the things that can affect retention? And how can we learn about those things, right? Supervisor talent, right, can affect it. compensation and benefits packages can affect your retention. The performance expectations and performance management of a client can affect all of this. And I got to have such a rich conversation with this client about their exit interviews, about how they select and support and train their managers. Is all of this, what are they doing to kind of onboard? Is their compensation competitive in their field? Do they know when they lose people? Do they know who they're losing them to, and where are they going? There's so much information that we could get, and we're still kind of in that discovery process where, it went from this, hey, we're struggling to retain, and we expanded on this massive journey of discovery. And now the next step is to kind of whittle it back down to what are those, how do we appropriately diagnose the problem so that we can, diagnose the cause of the problem so that we can address it. And that element of discovery certainly requires a degree of, I think, trust and connection, because you're kind of peeling back the layers of the client, I suppose. And I need them to be honest and upfront about what they know, and I need to be honest and upfront and practical about what we can and cannot do. And I really enjoy those genuine conversations and that kind of shared journey of discovery.
Out of all of the descriptions that you have talked about since you've been on the call, which one did you enjoy the most as you were describing it?
I'm in the middle of this most recent one, the retention problem, so it comes to mind, and that one's definitely a highlight right now for me.
Yeah. Your whole entire face lit up. You could feel the energy kind of oozing out of you as you're talking about it, right? So it's interesting. And if we go back to the initial question that I asked you, your first point was to go to that frustration and to those problem solving ones. So now, what else can you add to your criteria after talking about that last one?
Well, to recap, we've added, problems for which evidence can be applied, so kind of grounded in reality.
Yeah.
A relationship with the client. And I think this is kind of that genuine shared discovery. Like there's something to be discovered, right? We can kind of expand it and look for all those pieces of information that might be applicable.
Yes. Do you mind if I add in one more thing that I heard you say?
Please.
So you talked about this notion of cause and effect, right? And also a diagnosis. So those client projects where you're able to diagnose something and pull back the onion layers and think about the cause and effect, maybe the ones that really jazz you up, that really kind of get your talents working, right?
Yeah.
There's also a lot of possibilities in the way that you were talking, right?
Yeah.
So in that last description, which talents? I know you talked about your self-assurance, but what other strengths do you feel like were being fed, as we often say at Gallup? What other strengths were being fed, or are being fed, since you are in the thick of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely that analytical intellection and ideation, are kind of all being fed there. Definitely the analytical, because I want to be able to peel back the layers of the onion and diagnose and figure out what's going on. And I think, kind of getting, you just made me realize that the projects that I find frustrating are the projects where I haven't been involved in the diagnosis, where maybe the problem or the project is brought to me and the diagnosis is already assumed. Or the diagnosis is already a kind of a foregone conclusion based upon members of the team and perhaps even client leadership. Right. And I struggle to add value when that's the case.
Right. is there typically, or what is the timeline typically if we think about diagnosing and getting in? Is that at the beginning of client projects? Is that in the middle? Is that at the end? Does it run the gamut? What does it look like in terms of the timing?
Diagnosis should be happening near the beginning,
Okay.
you know, at the initiation of a client project. And certainly, you know, that is the ideal. It's not always reality, but our best work, my best work, and client impact occurs when that diagnosis occurs early and
Excellent.
rigorously.
Excellent. So is that another piece of criteria that you can add? The near the beginning piece?
I think so, or
Okay.
it's a useful criteria. There are certainly projects. What that means, I think, is that I have to muster the courage
Okay.
and tamp down the curiosity enough, perhaps, to say no if I'm asked to get involved, maybe in the middle.
What is another possibility if you are being asked to get involved in the middle where you can still feel excited about what the project that you're working on? What's another possibility?
I suppose I would need time with. I would need to kind of be brought in pretty thoroughly into, you know, what were the frustration points and what was the process of diagnosis. Like someone would have to, I'd have to spend some time with the people that did that, so that I can perhaps become bought in and aligned to the diagnosis.
Okay, excellent. So beginning would be best case scenario, it sounds like. In the event that maybe you get brought in the middle, or maybe even towards the end of the project, there's a desire there to definitely want to spend time with the problem, spend time with the people. I would imagine both at Gallup and with the client, so that you can get fully up to speed. Is that accurate? Okay.
Yeah, there needs to be that opportunity for kind of a relationship and discovery there.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. So I'm going to take a pause there. I want to ask you how you're feeling about all that we're talking about. If this is helpful for you, I want to make sure that I'm meeting your expectations.
Yes, I appreciate you asking about the successful projects, because it is, you know, maybe there's so many times when I'll wake up in the middle of the night and rush down to my notebook and take notes about things that I'm thinking about and regarding client problems, and it's usually that those 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. notes and what is occupying my brain space are sometimes the frustrating projects. And I don't know that I had stopped to be mindful. I don't think I'd stop myself to be mindful of the successful ones and leverage that. And maybe we just stumbled upon a more raw expression of my intellection talent, where I have maybe have an unhealthy obsession with the things that I haven't been able to solve, or the frustrating of it.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, it's really interesting. I mean, you not only have intellection, but you also have ideation, and you also have futuristic, and you also have strategic, and you've got, I mean, you're a very deep thinker, right? You just, all that brilliance, right? And you have to get it out, and it comes to you in the middle of the night. I mean, what a talent. So I'm glad that you're having some discovery with all of this.
In the words of our chief researcher, Ryan can live in his own head a lot.
I bet it's a wonderful place to be. Excellent. So I know we're getting close to the end, and I know we've got to have some discussion about this. So to wrap up, out of everything that we've talked about, I've got, you know, I want to make sure that you leave the coaching conversation with actionable steps, right? So if you think about the next, let's say, 2 to 3 weeks, what can you take from today's session and activate on as a result of the conversation? What are going to be maybe the 1, 2, or 3 things that you're going to commit to yourself to do as a result of today's session?
Well, I tend to process a lot of things by writing it down and put my thoughts into action by writing it down. So one, I want to write down this criteria. I think we have 3 or 4 facets to this criteria of that kind of the ideal projects for Ryan to be involved in. And then putting those criteria, I'll probably tape them up in my office somewhere on a piece of paper or a sticky note or on my whiteboard. And those criteria, a problem, grounded with evidence or data, a client relationship, an authentic or genuine shared journey of discovery, there. So just having that criteria in mind and leveraging it before I offer myself up onto various projects was super valuable. And I think regarding the project that is kind of a source of frustration right now, rather than just spend my time reading, writing, and ruminating about it, I think I need to get on the phone and hear the story, and make rather than just kind of living with it intellectually and trying to sort of crack the nut, from a deep thinking perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I probably need to get the story from both the client and our leadership team there, and just say, take me back. Where were we, 6 months ago? What took place? Where are we going? Because maybe I think there's something to be had from that relationship
Yeah.
there that I don't know that I've have done enough of yet.
Excellent. Excellent commitments. Well, this was fun. This was a lot of fun.
It's so, Jessica, it's funny. I mean, I've been aware of my strengths for well over 14 years. As a client of Gallup, it's the knowledge of StrengthsFinder and CliftonStrengths that attracted me to come work here. I see them every day. My top 10. When I come into my office, I think I can articulate how they play out in my life. But it's so helpful to have you ask some questions and reflect some of my own thoughts back to me and help me put this into some action steps that'll help me be more effective. So thank you.
Oh, excellent. My pleasure. That was great. All right. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, Jessica.
So we are going to bring Jacqueline into the fold, and we're going to start to have some discussion about the coaching that just happened. So Jacqueline, why don't we just start off with your maybe initial reactions or takeaways from from the discussion that just happened?
Yeah, I have so many notes down. This was just a great coaching conversation to watch and observe. So thank you for letting me be that third eye in the room, so to speak. um, but my first initial observation is just the way that you were able to weave so seamlessly what we discuss in our certified coaching courses against the ICF competencies. And so in the beginning, just establishing that trust and rapport and asking him a little about himself. Tell me a little bit about your job, Ryan. And then, you set the tone by saying, here's some ideas and options for how people will tend to take this call. Essentially completely up to you. Where would you like to start today? And we hear that so often, don't we, where people might not know what to do whenever they're in that coaching session, especially if it's their first one. So I like how you set that up. And then what we talk about a lot is if someone comes to you with a number of issues, where do you start? And so I love that you said, where would you like to start? I mean, it just sounds like such a simple question, but sometimes, if you're in a coaching conversation or you're new to coaching, you don't always know where to take it. So just putting it in his lap and saying, all right, where would you like to start today? Setting the intention of that coaching session was wonderful. Um, so I kind of tie that into just setting the foundation. If we start thinking about the ICF competencies a little bit, what else I liked was you would bring it back. You'd circle back to that initial issue he had. What's the criteria here? What coaching or what talent themes do you hear coming out? as we just talked and unpacked a little bit more about what's going on with you. And so you put that on him instead of kind of coming in and making the assumption, oh, that's your futuristic playing out, or oh, that's your ideation. You let him take that moment to really think and process, what is it that I'm hearing in myself that's coming out? And for those on the line, if you think about how many strategic thinking themes Ryan has, those silent pauses and just kind of putting it back on him and letting him think more cerebrally, I think was really effective. And you could see you light up, Ryan, whenever you would start thinking about your themes, and you could connect that back to a current role that you have. Um, which also leads me to thinking about so I tied that under powerful questioning, just so you all know, as I was thinking about core competencies, and creating awareness. So just again, creating that opening for him to really think about, what am I hearing? Have a powerful question, and then just put it back on that coachee. So one thing that I liked was also, you said, in a perfect world, where would you spend your time? And I think, Ryan, you seem to appreciate that question too, because you just kind of took a step back, and it was really like, wow, I didn't think about that before. And so what I thought was key there was, again, it goes back to leading with positive intent, and how we can get really stuck in the weeds on a problem if we're a coachee. And it's so wonderful when you have a coach that says, let's take a step back and let's just think about this from that 3,000-foot view. Let's get you out of the weeds and let's start thinking about what drives you and gives you energy and feeds that talent theme of yours. So that really helped you, I think, Ryan, start to think about, what is it that I enjoy? What feeds me? What am I doing with ease and excellence and enjoyment? Which then brought in that element of criteria. And let's set up
Mhm.
some criteria for you. Uh, so what I like, Jessica, is that it started so early on that you were already setting to set that intention and tone and start to identify some potential actions. So by the time you got to the end of the call and it was, okay, let's think about what actions you're going to take moving forward. Throughout that entire process, Ryan was already thinking about, okay, I'm going to put this on my criteria list. I'm going to put this on my criteria list. And so at the very end, it wasn't like, whoa, okay, what should I do? It was
Mhm.
just tied in so seamlessly, I think. And Ryan, what are your thoughts on that? And just
Well,
coming up with that criteria?
yeah, lots of thoughts.
Yeah.
I it's funny because you almost start this, and as a coachee, you're thinking, I'm eager to share my frustrations so my coach can solve them. You
Yes,
know, and I
yes.
know what it's so funny because I know what good coaching is, and I know that that's this is not about like Jessica solving all my problems and just her letting me vent for an hour, right?
Yeah.
Um, but even so, like that was kind of the emotional, instinct there, right?
Yes.
Was I'm going to vent my frustrations, and just in such a subtle, simple way with those simple questions,
Yes.
Jessica shifted the onus back to me, and I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm solving my problem. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not letting I'm not letting or forcing or cornering Jessica into doing it,
Mm.
and she did it with such that just simple opening questions, kind of, what do you want to focus on today?
Yes.
um, and kind of putting back the criteria. I love the fact that she kind of created that criteria. The action steps were identified along the way. It wasn't just a
Yes.
lot of back and forth, and then 30 minutes said, okay, what do we talk about and what are the action steps? Um, uh, she identified that along the way and kind of forced me to identify that as an actionable discovery that made a nice package at the end.
Yeah. God, so well said too. In my head, I just kept thinking the entire conversation circled between naming, claiming, aiming
Mm,
throughout the whole conversation, and then at the end, it was just tied with a bow. Okay, now that we've consistently just continued to name and claim where these themes are showing up and the criteria and your job roles, how do you want to just package that at the very end and think about your intention moving forward? Um, I
Excellent.
was also thinking about, so one thing that we often do whenever we're leading the coaching certification courses is we have you on the line think about, what themes are you hearing from the coach and what themes are you hearing from the coachee. And so I think we were all, our ears were perking, Ryan, when you were sharing out your themes, because we would hear little pieces of that when you said curiosity, and then you brought that back to learners. Like, yeah, I hear that. Or I love asking questions and thinking about how many strategic thinking themes you have. I was like, yes, okay, we can hear those connected. Jessica, then with you, as we think about some themes that might have been present, there were some key words I caught, and one was, let me look in my number of notes here. You brought up the keyword possibility a lot. So what's another possibility here? It just reminded me of futuristic, and how futuristic people are commonly thinking about the possibility. What lies ahead? What's that road ahead? And Ryan, I know that you have the futuristic and strategic too. So what I thought was interesting was just how well those complement each other, or how even if someone doesn't have futuristic and strategic as a coachee, playing to your own themes and seeing how that can support that current situation someone's going through can be really conducive. So I wanted to highlight, I heard a lot about discovery and possibility from you too. Um, and then activate on. So just to recall, Jessica has futuristic and activator in Relator in her top 5 as well. And so I heard that activate and thought, yeah, what are we going to get started on right now? And so that just came to me. And I don't know if you heard that or you resonate with that, but as we continue to think about mining for strengths as coaches, picking up on those key words that could be connected to a talent theme, was something that I just wanted to highlight when I was observing both of you.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, I felt that activator. Your activator has come through as a coach. Like when you asked me, like, what are you going to do kind of this week? It was really like, okay, what's going on your calendar? What's going on the to-do list?
Excellent.
Super helpful.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. And very, very thorough kind of debrief there, Jacqueline. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts.
You're welcome.
I do want to get Jim involved in this conversation. I'm sure that there are lots of questions and hopefully lots of dialogue within the chat room. So Jim, please jump in there.
Yeah, lots of really positive feedback on this method or this mode. The coaches enjoyed seeing this happen. Jessica, I want to ask you in a coaching moment, how did it feel as you were starting the process, knowing there were hundreds? We had 250 at some point watching you live do this. You had Jacqueline with a pen and a piece of paper. How did you feel going into this?
Ferociously writing.
It's so interesting. I chose to focus on Ryan. So I went into this knowing that there were going to be people watching me, but my intention was to stay extremely present and to ask good questions. And I feel like as a coach, right? If you do those two things, you can never go wrong. If I were to have my attention on all of those other things, it would be really hard for me to stay present and to understand how to kind of pivot in the moment with the conversation. So I just kind of ignored everything.
Well,
so that's how I did it.
You did a great job.
You did do a nice job of blocking it out. I kind of had that realization for you at one moment. We were good. The chat was rolling, and then I kind of realized, holy cow! I would so choke up on the bat if I realized, like, oh my gosh, all these people are listening. There was a moment there where you asked Ryan a question and it moved him for a moment, and then he kind of forgot the question and threw it back to you. I've done that when I've been coaching employees, and you're so in the moment listening, you kind of forget the question you asked. Jessica, any tips on, like, do you write those down, or do you know? Because it's frustrating when you come back and you're like, oh man, that was such a good question, but I was so focusing on you, I've already forgotten it. Any tips on that, or Jacqueline, any tips?
It's really interesting, and this is such a good question, Jim, because when you are so in the moment and so focused, you're not necessarily thinking about how the question is going to come to you. So I'm not listening with the intent of asking my next question. A lot of times my question is being formulated as I'm asking it. And so I don't write it down, but I do have high input. So a lot of times it's easier for me to recall what I just said. Maybe than other people. So if you have high input, it's a little bit easier. So I don't know if that's a good tactic. I don't know, Jacqueline, or even Ryan. I know Ryan coaches. Do you all have some insight on how to remember questions that you asked?
That's a good one.
I definitely write notes, sometimes when I'm coaching, and I'm I'm not a fast enough note taker to say write down like a full question, but I might usually just like a couple of keywords. If I have a blank piece of paper in front of me, and a pen, and I can just kind of be jotting down keywords a little bit as we're going, that kind of helps me sort of keep the thread. I'll also, well, Jacqueline, what would you add?
Yeah, same here. I love that of keeping the thread. Just keywords or quick sentences really help.
Yeah, and I'll say, I wanted to say too that from the coachee's perspective, it was a good question, and I recognize that my own talents, kind of took us on the tangent there. But Jessica, you still made it feel seamless. And when I kind of threw that back to you of, okay, what was that question again? And did I answer it? I got lost in my own thought. Go figure. Jessica, you didn't. I mean, you didn't scramble. You didn't like look down at your notepad and like, oh my gosh, what was it? You made it feel you made it feel very seamless. So well
Well,
done.
that's good to know. Thanks.
A bunch of questions around, would the call have gone differently if the client was not as Gallup savvy, Ryan? You're kind of a ringer, right? Ryan, let me say though, I
Yeah.
know you, and I felt like you really came at this genuinely. Like this was not a, by the way, we didn't practice this, or is it staged, right? This was no script involved here. This was a real live conversation. Ryan, let me ask you, as you approach this, and maybe even your thoughts on it, yes, you're Gallup savvy, but I didn't get a feel like that was to your advantage. You were being genuine with us. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is absolutely all of the sort of the problems, frustrations, and kind of the personal struggles that I was describing here. Kind of the personal feelings of ambiguity around where should I get involved and what should I do. That is so real. And if you wanted to invite my wife onto the call, she would absolutely confirm that. So it's part of that is, Jessica and I know each other, Jacqueline and I know each other, Jim, you and I know each other. It's easy to be genuine, and I don't know that I could. Frankly, I don't know that I'm a good enough actor to fake it otherwise. So those are real concerns that probably grow out of my hyperactive strengths. And Jessica, I appreciate your coaching and leading me to be more effective through it.
Jessica, what would you say approaching Ryan, knowing he's a Gallup employee, that we talk about this all the time? Does that change it for you at all, kind of knowing that you might be up against somebody who has 15 years of strengths, vocabulary, can speak to it, versus maybe someone who's new to this space? Does that change it for you as a coach?
It's a really good question. I think for me, I could have let it derail me and could have let it intimidate me. Instead, I chose to just focus as Ryan as the person, as opposed to Ryan as the Gallup employee. And that's how I approach every single one of my coaching conversations. It's about the person, it's about what they are feeling, it's about their development, and it's not really at all about me. And so because I took that approach, I think that it was easier for me to be in the moment. I will say that I do have more familiarity with what Ryan is talking about because we have the same role. So from that standpoint, I could relate to him on different levels than I could, let's say, if I was coaching an accountant or a marketing person or something like that. But even in those instances, I would say it's not every day that I'm coaching a person that works for Gallup, but if I just keep my focus on the person, keep my focus on what their problem is and supporting them in their journey, I don't think you can go wrong.
Jacqueline, would you add anything to that? Oh, hold on, Ryan. 1 sec. Jacqueline, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, it takes me back to something we always say, and there was a TED Talk I watched recently. I don't have input high, so I don't remember the name off the top of my head. But it was the messaging was every coach needs a coach, and so no matter how many times you coach, you still kind of can get lost in your own thoughts and your own self and your own day-to-day life. And so having someone with that objective viewpoint, they might know you, but having someone that's just not you, that can sit there and think about what you're saying and kind of reiterate back what they're hearing and tie that together is really helpful. Because even the best coaches, or those that have been doing it forever, or might be know their themes well, still just get lost in the day-to-day ruts of life. And so I really do go back to every coach needs a coach. And you could just see it with you, Ryan, that it was a genuine problem that you were coming with, and you went right to the weeds, which we know happens so frequently. And we all know, lead with positive intent, think positive, think about what you enjoy. But again, the day-to-day rigmarole of life, sometimes you just forget that and you get yourself in the weeds. And so, yeah, it goes right back to every coach needs a coach.
Yeah, I mean, I think this all reminded me of, to paraphrase, I think a Don Clifton quote, and it's, personal development always happens in relationship to another human being. And sometimes I'll admit that sometimes that DIY, person that's in me, the self-assurance and the thinking, I think, okay, if I think about this hard enough, that I can solve it. If I think about this critically enough, if I write about it enough, I can make myself more effective. I can get to clarity if I, on my own. And the simple questions that you asked me today, Jessica, your focus on me, and your challenges to me, kind of created those realizations and helped me think about things and put together some actions that I had not arrived at on my own.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It was beautiful to see those aha moments of self-awareness, and then how you could better self-express that in your current role, self-express your themes better, and just really adapt and self-regulate. So if you think about that cycle as well, you could just see it come to life.
Right.
We've done maybe 600 or 700 of these webcasts like this here at Gallup. I'm always skeptical, just full transparency, in this style because it's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable to do. You don't know where it's going to go. You don't know if it's going to work. This has worked. This is the best we've done out of the 700 that I've done. And the comments that we're getting in the chat room, this is some of the best that I've seen. So Jessica, Jacqueline, Ryan, thank you guys for being kind of transparent in this. I think we got a lot of comments in the chat room about like, do more of this, Gallup. We'd like to see more of this, guys. I think we're on to something here with it. But Jessica, we've got some final thoughts, some final things we need to do. There were some questions about ICF. We mentioned that a lot today. In fact, we're mentioning that more. So Jessica, let me turn it back over to you and let's close this up.
All right. So don't forget about those ICF credits. I know Jim talked about them at the beginning. So live attendees, this session is worth 1 core competency CCE hour from ICF. Watch for the event evaluation in your inbox on Friday. On the evaluation, you will be asked to indicate which sessions you attended, either live or via the recording. If you are watching the recorded version, you can earn 1 resource development hour for this session per ICF's guidelines. We hope you join for our next session later today with Therese Nisbet and Jillian Anderson, who will join us to talk about how to use the CliftonStrengths 34 report, that new report, when working with teams. And earlier this week, Jackie Merritt shared her insights about using the report with individuals, and our next session will be focused on using the report with the team. Thank you for joining us today. I want to thank Jacqueline. I want to thank Ryan, Jim Collison, as always. Thank you to the Gallup coaching community. I hope you have a great rest of the day. For those of you in cold temperatures, stay warm, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.